Let me start with the footprints, because that's where this begins, not with a body, with a single set of footprints in the snow. It's late March 1922, somewhere in the quiet farm country of Bavaria in southern Germany. There's a small, isolated farmstead, just a cluster of buildings at the edge of a forest. The nearest village is a walk away. The place is called Hinterkaifeck, and the old farmer who lives there, a man named Andreas Gruber, finds tracks in the snow, footprints, coming out of the tree line, crossing the open field, leading straight to his house. Now that on its own is nothing, people walk. But Andreas follows those tracks, and he notices something that he can't explain, something that by his own account he couldn't shake. The footprints only go one way. They lead to the house, they do not lead away. Whoever walked out of that forest, in the dark, in the snow, and came to his door, never left. 6 days later, every single person living at that farm would be dead, murdered, and the killer, as far as anyone can tell, was already there, already inside, maybe had been for a while. This is the Hinterkaifeck murders. 100 years on, it is still the most famous unsolved crime in German history. And I'll be honest with you, by the end of this, I don't think you'll sleep any easier.
Let me set the scene properly, because the place matters here. Hinterkaifeck wasn't a town. It wasn't even really a hamlet. It was one farm, one family's holding, sat out on its own between two villages, with woods pressing in close on one side. If you stood in the yard, the nearest neighbors were far enough away that no one would hear you call out. No one would hear much of anything. That kind of isolation was normal for the time and the place. Farmers lived where they farmed. But it's the first thing you have to hold on to in this story. Whatever happened at Hinterkaifeck happened in a pocket of the world where you were, for all practical purposes, alone. The family that lived there were the Grubers. Andreas, the old farmer, in his 60s. His wife, Cecilia, older still, in her 70s. Their widowed daughter, Viktoria, in her 30s. And Viktoria's 2 young children, a little girl also named Cecilia, who was 7, and a toddler, Joseph, who was 2 years old. So 2 elderly grandparents, a single mother, and 2 small children out on a lonely farm at the edge of the woods. And there was about to be one more person in that house, a brand new maid who had been hired to help with the work. Her name was Maria Baumgartner. She'd arrive at Hinterkaifeck on the very last day of its family's life. She'd be dead within hours of setting down her bags. But before all of that, before the new maid, before the murders, there were the warnings. And this is the part of the case that gets under your skin. Because Andreas Gruber, the old farmer, was not a nervous man. He was hard, by all accounts, practical, not the type to imagine things. And in the weeks before he died, he was telling people that something was wrong at his farm. It started small. He found those footprints in the snow that I told you about, to the house, never away. Then the house keys went missing, just gone. Then he heard things, footsteps up in the attic at night. He went up to look, found nothing, but the sounds kept coming. He found marks on the lock of the machine shed, like someone had tried to force it. And then, strangest of all, he found a newspaper on the property, a newspaper that nobody in the family had bought, that nobody could account for. Where had it come from? Who had brought it there, into a locked, isolated farm in the middle of nowhere? Andreas told a neighbor about some of this. He told people in the village. And here's the thing that I keep turning over in my head. He didn't go to the police. He didn't leave. He stayed. They all stayed. Because what do? You've got a farm, you've got animals, you've got a life. You can't just walk away because of footsteps in the attic.
And there's one more detail from before the murders, one that, looking back, feels almost unbearable. About 6 months earlier, the family's previous maid had quit, walked off the job. And the reason she gave was simple. She said the house was haunted. She said she heard voices, footsteps, things she couldn't explain, and she would not stay there another night. Now, you can roll your eyes at that. A superstitious country girl, spooked by an old creaking farmhouse. That's the easy read. That's what most people would have thought at the time. But sit with it for a second in the light of everything else. A maid hears noises and flees, convinced something is in the house. Months later, the farmer himself starts finding footprints that lead in but never out. Hears footsteps in the attic, finds a stranger's newspaper, loses his keys. What if it wasn't a ghost? What if there was simply someone living up in that attic, coming down when the family slept, eating their food, watching them for days, maybe weeks? That's not a ghost story. That's so much worse, because a ghost can't pick up a tool and walk into the barn. I want to be careful here. We don't know that. Nobody knows that for certain. It's one theory among several, and we'll get to the others. But it fits the facts in a way that makes your skin crawl, and the people who study this case have never been able to fully let go of it.
So let's get to the day itself. It's March 31st, 1922, a Friday. And on this day, the new maid arrives, Maria Baumgartner. She's in her 40s. She's come to take the place of the maid who quit, the one who fled the haunted house. Think about her just for a moment. She has no idea about any of it. The footprints, the keys, the attic, the warnings. She shows up to a new job on a quiet farm, ready to work, ready to start a new chapter. Her sister actually walked her to the farm and then left. Maria stayed. She arrived in the evening. By that night, she would be dead, along with everyone else at Hinterkaifeck. She had been at her new home for a matter of hours. Now here's what makes reconstructing the murders so difficult. There were no survivors, no witnesses who lived. So what investigators pieced together later, they pieced together from the scene itself, from where the bodies were found and what the wounds told them. And what the scene suggested was methodical, cold, almost patient. The killer, it's believed, lured the victims out to the barn, one by one. The theory is that they were drawn out individually, perhaps by some sound or some pretext, into the barn. And there, in the dark, each of them was struck down with a heavy farming tool, a mattock, a kind of pickaxe used to break up soil, a brutal, heavy thing. 4 of them died in that barn. The old farmer, Andreas, his wife, Kazelia, their daughter, Viktoria, and Viktoria's little girl, 7-year-old Kazelia. Their bodies were found stacked, laid one on top of another, and covered over with hay, hidden. The other 2, the toddler, Josef, and the new maid, Maria, were killed where they were, inside the house. Josef in his cot, in the room with his mother's things, Maria in her small quarters. The killer moved from the barn to the house and finished it. 6 people in one night, with a farm tool, in near silence, in a place where there was no one near enough to hear. And I have to tell you one detail of the examination of the bodies, because it's the one that has haunted this case for a century, and it's the one I almost don't want to say. When they examined the body of the little girl, 7-year-old Kazelia, they concluded that she had not died right away. That after she was struck in the barn, in the dark, surrounded by her family, she had survived for hours, lying there, alive. They found that she had torn out clumps of her own hair. In her last hours, in agony, in the dark, that's what she did. I'm not going to dwell on it. I don't believe in dwelling on the suffering of a child for the sake of a video, but you have to know it because it tells you something about how long that night was and how alone they were.
And now we come to the part of the Hinterkaifeck case that separates it from almost every other murder you've ever heard of. Because here's what should have happened next. A killer does something this terrible, this risky, out at an isolated farm, and he runs. He gets as far away as he possibly can, as fast as he can. That's what they do. They flee. This one didn't. This one stayed. For days after the murders, there were signs of life at Hinterkaifeck. The animals, the cattle, were fed and cared for. Someone was looking after them. Neighbors, glancing toward the farm from a distance, saw smoke rising from the chimney. The household fire was being kept. There were signs that food in the kitchen had been eaten, meals had been made. Somebody was living at that farm, cooking, keeping warm, tending the livestock, going about a kind of grim, ordinary routine. And the whole time, 6 bodies were lying just feet away. 4 of them under the hay in the barn, 2 in the house. Let that picture form in your mind. The smoke from the chimney, the fed animals, the quiet farm in the cold spring air, looking from a distance almost normal. And inside, death, and someone moving calmly through it as if nothing had happened at all. What kind of person does that? Who kills 6 people and then settles in, makes themselves at home in the house of the family they just destroyed? That's the question at the black heart of this case, and no one has ever answered it. So how was it finally discovered? Not quickly. That's the awful part. The isolation that defined Hinterkaifeck protected the killer right to the end. It took about 4 days. 4 days before the outside world realized something was wrong. And it wasn't a scream, or a witness, or a stroke of luck. It was the small, ordinary machinery of village life grinding against the silence. The little girl, Cecilia, didn't show up for school. The family didn't appear at church that Sunday. The postman couldn't deliver the mail because no one came for it, and it piled up. A local mechanic who was supposed to come work at the farm found that no one answered. Little absences, the kind of thing that one at a time you'd shrug off, but together they started to worry people. And finally, a small group of neighbors decided to walk out to Hinterkaifeck and see for themselves what was going on. They were the ones who found it. They went into the barn, they moved the hay, and they found the bodies of 4 people who had been missing for days. Then they went into the house and they found the other 2. Imagine being one of those men, walking out to check on your neighbors on a gray spring day and walking into that. The police were called, and what followed was one of the largest and ultimately one of the most frustrating murder investigations Germany had ever seen.
Now, you'd think a crime scene like that, with a killer who hung around for days, would be covered in evidence. And in a sense, it was. But this was 1922. Forensic science as we know it didn't exist. No DNA, no real fingerprinting to speak of, not in a rural Bavarian murder case. and the scene itself had been badly compromised. Here's something that tells you how different that era was. When the investigators were trying to work the case, they brought in, and I'm not exaggerating, they had the heads of the victims removed and sent to Munich. The skulls were examined by clairvoyants, by so-called psychics who were supposed to divine something from them. It sounds insane now. It was a different world. And those skulls, by the way, were later lost. They went missing during the chaos of the Second World War, and to this day, the victims of Hinterkaifeck lie in their graves without their heads. That's the level of strangeness this case operates on. Hundreds of people were questioned over the years. Hundreds. The investigation was reopened again and again for decades. As recently as the 2000s, German police cadets took another run at it as a training exercise, applying modern thinking to the old evidence. They reached a conclusion about who they thought was most likely responsible, but out of respect for living relatives, they chose not to release the name publicly. So even the most modern attempt ends with a door that stays closed.
So who did it? Across 100 years, the theories have piled up. Let me walk you through the main ones, because each tells you something, and none of them quite closes the lid. The first theory is robbery. A thief breaks in, gets surprised, kills everyone. Simple, except it doesn't hold, because money was found in the house, a decent sum by the standards of that farm, left untouched. A robber kills 6 people and then leaves the cash sitting there and stays for days? Robbery just doesn't explain the behavior. Whatever drove this, it wasn't a quick grab for money. The second theory turns inward toward the family itself, and here we have to talk about the uncomfortable parts of the Gruber household. There were dark rumors about Andreas, the old farmer, and his widowed daughter, Viktoria. Ugly things. There were also questions about the true father of Viktoria's 2-year-old, Joseph. Some have wondered whether the murders grew out of something tangled and poisonous inside that family, a jealousy, a secret, a score being settled. The third theory points at the men in Viktoria's life. She was a widow. Her husband had died in the First World War. There were men connected to her, past and present, who have been looked at hard over the years. A spurned suitor, a former partner, someone with a claim or a grudge or both. And the fourth, the one we started with, is the stranger. I keep coming back to the stranger. I can't help it, because that theory ties together the things that no other theory can. The footprints leading in but not out, the footsteps in the attic, the missing keys, the strange newspaper, the previous maid who fled, swearing the house was haunted. Picture it. Someone, for reasons we will never know, takes up residence in the unused space of that farmhouse, the attic, above the heads of the family, for days, maybe longer. They come down when it's safe. They take a little food. They move things. The family starts to sense it in that animal way we sense being watched, but they can't see anything, so they tell themselves it's nothing. Mice, the wind, an old house settling. And then, one night, the thing in the attic decides it's time, and it comes down the stairs. If that's what happened, then the most chilling part isn't the murders, it's everything before them. It's all those ordinary evenings the family spent in that house, eating, talking, putting the children to bed, while someone, just a few feet above them, sat in the dark and listened and waited. We don't know that it happened that way. I want to be square with you about that. It's a theory. The footprints, the noises, all of it could have other explanations. But it's the version that refuses to leave you alone once you've heard it, because it suggests that the family's killer wasn't a stranger who arrived that night. He was a presence they'd been living with all along.
Here's what makes Hinterkaifeck so much heavier than a normal whodunit. It's not just that we don't know who did it, it's that the case seems almost designed to deny us comfort at every single turn. We don't have a culprit, we don't have a confession, we don't have a clear motive. The robbery angle falls apart. The family angle is all rumor and shadow. The suitor angle never produced enough to convict. The stranger angle is the scariest and the least provable. Every road leads into fog. We don't even have the physical remains intact. The skulls were taken, examined by mystics, and then lost to a war. The farmhouse itself, it was torn down within a year of the murders, demolished, as if the village wanted to erase the place from the earth. When they pulled it apart, by the way, they say a tool was found in the structure, a mattock, possibly the murder weapon, sitting there, in the house, the whole time. 100 years have passed. Everyone who could have done it is long dead. Everyone who could have confessed took their silence into the ground. The German police made their best modern guess and then chose, for decent reasons, not to say the name out loud. So this is one of those rare cases where you can read everything, study every theory, sit with it for years, and still arrive at nothing. A locked room with no key, 6 people, 1 night, and a silence that has outlived all of them.
Before I let you go, I want to bring it back to the people, because it's easy with a mystery this old and this strange to get lost in the puzzle of it, the footprints, the attic, the suspects, and to forget that this was real. There was an old man who worked his land and in his last weeks tried to tell people that something was wrong and wasn't taken seriously. There was his wife. There was a widow who had already buried a husband from the war and was raising 2 small children on her own. There was a little girl of 7 who liked, by all accounts, to be just that, a little girl, and a baby boy of 2 who never had a chance to become anything at all. And there was Maria, the new maid, who walked into that farm with her bags and her hopes on the last evening of her life and trusted that she'd be safe. 6 people who lived quiet, hard, ordinary lives in a quiet corner of Bavaria, and who were taken in the dark by someone whose face we will never see, whose name we will never know for certain, and who, for a few cold days in the spring of 1922, simply moved in and lived among the dead. That's the part I can't get past. Not the mystery, the loneliness of it. They were so far from anyone, and in the end, the only one who knew what happened to them was the one who did it.
So I'll leave it where I always do, with you. What do you think happened out there at Hinterkaifeck? Was it the family, with all its dark and tangled secrets? Was it a man Viktoria had wronged or who believed she had? Or was it the stranger in the attic, the watcher in the dark who came down the stairs when the house was asleep? There's no answer key on this one. There never has been. So tell me, in the comments, genuinely, I read them. Tell me which version you believe and why. On a case like this, your guess is as good as 100 years of detectives. And that, in its own grim way, is the whole point. I'm Gravenfield. The cases that were closed, but never solved. There are more of them right here, if you've got the stomach for the dark. Take care of yourselves out there. And maybe, tonight, check the attic.